fans are really, truly damaged.
Interesting start.
They really are, because the Mets lost a game. And since June, the Mets are the best team in baseball record-wise. And all you hear right now, I listen to all the shows, and I know that Don called into Barton Hahn, they had him on, and he had to say can you imagine you lose one game, and you're already thinking about, oh, here we go again, we're going to blow it. The best team in baseball for over 3 months, they lose one game, and you're already saying, we've had a house of horrors in Atlanta. It's happening. You lost one game. Now, maybe they do lose all three. I have no idea. But to have that kind of mindset, expecting the worst on, what are people doing?
Well, I'm with you. I don't know why you've got to go there. As a fan, I'm not going there. It's a loss. Hey, this team lost 12-2 on Friday to Philadelphia. They bounced back and won 2 exhilarating games on Saturday and Sunday against a team that's much better than the Atlanta Braves. So I'm not going to panic. All right, Severino didn't have it. He fought through it. The rookie has been shutting down a lot of people during the course of the seasons, including the Mets. So I'm not going to freak out. Now, ask me tomorrow after another loss, I might change my mind. I'm not going to freak. But to defend the Met fan, Michael, granted, it would be in the playoffs. But wouldn't the Yankee fan base react the same way if they dropped, game 1 of a best-of-7 series against the Astros? Oh, here we go. Can't beat the Astros in a big spot. They own us. The Mets have owned the Mets have been owned by the Braves, Michael, for 2 decades. So I can understand feeling like you're going down that road again. I'm not going to go there because I think this team is better. If you remember 2 years ago when the Braves blew by them like they were standing still, they struggled in September. You saw the Mets' demise coming. They've been the best team in baseball since May 30th. So this would come out of the blue. So I'm not as worried as Met fans are, but that happens. What do you think? How do you think Giant fans feel about playing the Dallas Cowboys? Dak Prescott's beaten them 12 straight times. Ownage is ownage, Michael. And when there's a team that has your number, I can understand a fan base feeling negative. I don't think Met fans should, but I'm not surprised by it.
Well, but the 3 pitchers that got swept in 2022, it was, right?
Yes.
They're no longer on the team.
Right.
You're sending 3 different complete different pitchers out, a different manager, a different mindset.
Oh.
It's unbelievable. Would Yankee fans go there? I think they'd go there after the series. They go, the Astros, we can't beat. But after one game, do you really think they feel like that, Don? This is the best team in baseball for 3 months.
You don't think, Peter, you're probably a person to ask, right? Because you've been a part of it, but you don't have a dog in the fight.
I don't.
You don't think there would be Yankee fans, complete panic, if they lost game 1 to the Astros because it was the Astros and the ownage that the Astros have had on them? You don't think I'm not saying the whole fan base, but the people that would call this show would be like, oh, here we go again. Can't beat the Astros in a big spot. Or do you think they'd be like, oh, it's just one game. We're still going to win the series? What would the calls be like?
For a playoff series, panic.
All right, but now what I'm saying here, I'm not just I started off with the Mets because Yankee fans proved last night a lot of them are pretty damaged too.
Okay.
All right, and I don't read social media during the game, but after the game I'll look to see what people were saying. So at one point during the game, I had said it's going to be interesting. What we talked about on the air yesterday. Going to be an interesting thing, what they do with left field, because Dominguez had a rough road trip in left field. He did. But clown heads, mouth breathers, right away jumped me. Had a rough road trip. He had 2 home runs. He had a 900 OPS. It's not what I said. I didn't say anything about offense. It was his defense where it was rough. In the postseason, you're going to want to get every single out of the 27. If you give any away, you're going to be in trouble. Right now, and I think this guy's going to be a superstar, he's not a good defensive outfielder, especially in left field, which is where he would play. So I said they might go with Verdugo, and then it'd be interesting to see if Dominguez even makes the roster. Now, this is just Michael K. talking.
Right.
It's not anybody telling me that. I'm just trying to surmise how they make out their 26-man roster. Now, Verdugo's terrible offensively. He's terrible. So they're going to have to make a decision in the postseason. Do we want defense or do we want a guy with some clout in his bat that could actually slug the ball? And that's Jason Dominguez. That's the decision they have to make. But here's where I say damage people. You ready for this?
Yes.
So then there was this thread of people that I said that he had a bad road trip, and then they're jumping because he had 2 home runs. Never said anything about his offense, ever. And then it turned into, well, obviously, he's gotten his marching orders from Cashman, and the gaslighting is beginning so that when they don't have Dominguez starting, he's already paved the way. As if me, on my show and on the game, that I could actually pave the way for the fans not to freak out. So here's my deal. I'm going to make an offer that I've never made before. So those fans that say I got my marching orders from Cashman, I give you a standing offer of $10,000 right now. $10,000 cash. Wouldn't even be a check. If you could prove that over the last 2 months of this year that I've had any interaction with Brian Cashman, walking by him, saying him hello, text, anything, email, any kind of phone conversation, if you mouth-breathing lowlifes can prove that I've had interaction with Brian Cashman where he could, quote-unquote, give me his marching orders, $10,000 when you give me the proof.
I got to tell you, it would be worth it for somebody out there to do the work if you could.
Do the work. Because it doesn't exist. Do the work.
Oh, I've got no reason not to believe you, Michael, but I think somebody out there could use $10,000.
Oh, I'm sure. And they'd have to fabricate something because I have not had an interaction with Brian Cashman in at least 2 months. So marching orders. What a bunch of morons.
But this shouldn't surprise you, Michael.
Well, I just said fans are damaged.
Yeah, you were just giving your thoughts, which might end up being true. But marching orders, my God. But, fans are in panic. Met fans are in panic. I don't know why Yankee fans are even upset. They've been the best team in baseball here recently, in the American League at least. All right, so they didn't clinch the division. They'll do it tonight. If not tonight, they'll do it tomorrow. At some point, they're going to win the American League East, right, Michael? Are you that worried? They're going to go 0-5 to close out the season?
And the Orioles will have to go 5-0 after this. So, no, I'm not worried at all. I mean, you do worry a little bit. Nestor Cortez just went on the IL with a flexor strain in his elbow. That doesn't sound good, everybody. And Nestor Cortez has been lights out, so they're going to start Marcus Stroman tonight. So when you put a pitcher on the IL, it has to be 15 days, not 10, so that you can't have shenanigans. Right. Where you put pitchers on and off, and they just, they essentially miss the start. 15 days. So the only way that he could rejoin them in the ALDS would, if he comes off the IL healthy, he has to replace somebody that's injured. So the earliest that he could come on without that happening would be the ALCS. That's a loss, especially the way he's been pitching. That's a little bit of a concern. So they put him on the IL. They call up Cody Poteet, and Marcus Stroman is going to start tonight. Now, another thing about yesterday's Yankee game was the base running by Gleyber Torres. I've been telling you guys for the last 2 months, he's not coming back. So the fact that he's hit 300 over the last month and a half, everybody's saying, oh, maybe we should sign him. You think they're going to sign him? You think they're going to keep him? He's not an instinctive ball player. He's a good hitter. At times he makes good plays in the field. He makes more errors than anybody in baseball at second base. And the running mistake that he made yesterday, it's common. He's been thrown out more than anybody in baseball at home plate, other than Yandy Diaz. They're both tied. I think they've been thrown out 6 times. And what happened on that play, Don and Peter, is unbelievable to me on 2 fronts. Now, Gleyber gets a lot of the blame, which he should because he had a brain lock. But you know who else made a mistake? And nobody wants to admit it, is Juan Soto. Why are you going to second base there? For what reason? There's no need. You could see, if you look over your left shoulder, that Luis Rojas had held him up in plenty of time. Stay at first base. You go to second base because you hope that they cut the ball off, and then that allows the run to score. The run wasn't scoring, and then Gleyber lost his mind. But a lot of the blame goes to Soto. Another thing that you think about with that play, why is Soto going to second? Because if he does go to second and makes it, you know what happens? Automatic walk to Aaron Judge.
Yep.
Now, even at first and third, they probably walk Judge, but it makes the manager think more because it's second base open, not first. But if you're going to second and first base is open, it's an invitation for Brandon Hyde to intentionally walk Judge. All around, it was a breakdown. The Yankees are not an instinctively good base running team. Sorry, they're not. And you hope it doesn't rise up and bite them. I wonder all the people that have been calling up guys. Oh, I hope they keep. I hope they keep Glaber. You think they still hope you keep Glaber? I mean, Glaber is a good hitter when he wants to be, but he's not an instinctive baseball player. He's just not. And you're going to be able to move Jazz Chisholm over to second base. You already have his replacement.
And Jazz, you would consider a naturally instinctive baseball player.
And more so than Glaber, yes. So it's just weird. Again, the Yankees lose a game they would have liked to have won. They want to celebrate, obviously, the American League East. I get it. The Mets lose a game. Now, the one thing that would worry me, of the three pitchers that the Braves are sending out there, the one pitcher that you thought you'd have a chance, although Schnellenbach has been pretty good since he's been a savior for them, that's the guy you think you could get to. Chris Sale's been unhittable, Don. If they play tonight's game, you don't like their chances.
Right, but they did push him back a day because he had lost a little velocity, so maybe there is something going on there. It's late in the season. I'm kind of anxious to see how they respond. Peterson did not look great in his last outing, but overall, he's been tremendous, 9-3 with a 3.08 earned run average. But I'm anxious to see them play. I am not as worried as I normally would be because I think this is a good baseball team, and I think they're playing well, and I'm not going to freak out because of one game. Again, they looked terrible on Friday, Michael. They got off the mat, and they won the next two games against Philadelphia. That's a much better team than Atlanta. So, I mean, I know there are ghosts, and this goes back to, you know, Kenny Rogers. It goes a long way, Michael, to the Mets not being able to beat the Braves in a big spot. But I just feel differently about this team, and I'm anxious to see. Now, I don't know what to expect, if they're going to be playing in a steady rainstorm. It's so funny to me that Major League Baseball is so worried about the competitive imbalance of having maybe openers begin a second game of a doubleheader if they preemptively tried to play two yesterday, or not being able to play an afternoon game because too many of the people that work in that area will have no place to park, or, how will fans get there and all that. But yet they might have a really important game, the biggest game of the season, played in steady rain with puddles in the outfield, with pitchers maybe warming up and then a long rain delay. Isn't that the worst case scenario, Michael, of all the things that they didn't want to do?
Yeah, this is awful.
Isn't the worst thing them playing in a steady rainstorm tonight, and it looked awful, like a football game in the pouring rain?
It's terrible for baseball. That an important game would be played in these conditions.
And God forbid somebody of significance on either team steps on first base wrong because it's soaking wet and breaks his ankle and then can't play the rest of the regular season or the postseason. To me, this is what I would try to avoid. Instead of the doubleheader or a day game that would be inconvenient for the fans, I think you got to worry about the players and you got to worry about the competitiveness of the game. And this is one of, if not the biggest games for both of these teams tonight, and it might be played in a rainstorm.
And it's not. This is not football where there's some charm and intrigue to the rainy game.
No, you're right.
It just makes it trash.
It makes it sloppy. It does not let your talents actually present themselves. It's terrible. But my point again is about all fans, that to think that the Goblins in Atlanta are going to come get different team, different manager, different scenarios.
There are some players, like Acuna booted a double play in the first inning. They were able to get out of it, didn't allow a run.
They played a sloppy game yesterday.
They played very sloppy. But Acuna wasn't even. He
probably wasn't born when it began.
Well, he wasn't even a Met. It's ridiculous.
Well, I mean, they people are quoting 98, 99, right? He wasn't born.
He wasn't born. All right. Pete Alonso's a part of the team. Lindor's a part of the team, but and he may not even. We'll see if he even plays the rest of this series. But the overall point is, Michael, I get the fans and I get this team. It's this team. It's this guy. It just seems like they always have to find a way to be able to get through this team. But God, do you believe in them? 2 years ago, Michael, they were fading in September. You kind of saw it coming the way they were playing, and then the Braves blew by them, and you were surprised because of who was pitching in those games. They had their best pitchers and still got beat. I got a different feel. Maybe I'm wrong, but I'm being honest with you. I'm not trying to talk myself into anything. Anthony asked me before the game, "Are you worried?" I said, no. I'm worried whether the game is going to get played and the condition in which it will be played. But I believe in this team. And also, Michael, it might be the Braves and the Mets going to the playoffs and the Diamondbacks out.
Yeah, they keep losing.
They're at home. They lost 11-0 to the Giants.
The Giants have been destroying people, Don.
Then they're just trying to see if they can finish a 500. But right now, I think they're a game under 500, beating up on a Diamondback team that needs these games. Now, they might catch a break because the Padres might be locked into the to the one wild card by the time we get to the weekend. But the Padres are only 2 back of the Dodgers. Padres might actually still win the National League West, so that might still be meaningful for the Padres. So we might be talking about being scared of the Atlanta Braves. Both these teams might end up going to the playoffs, and it might be the Diamondbacks that don't make it.
So, I mean, but the point about, the Met fans overreacting, if you are overreacting over that loss, right? Because if you look at the Braves, that's a team that's been ravaged by injuries. Brian Snitker's done an unbelievable job to keep them in the conversation.
He has.
But if you believe that this is the beginning of the whole thing unraveling, then you believe in ghosts and goblins. You do. You just believe in this fairy that's in the air that's just controlling the fact that the Mets can't beat the Braves. One of my buddies just sent me chapter and verse, all the things that have happened over the years and why it's legitimate that they're freaking out. So he must believe in ghosts. 98, Mets entered the last series tied with the Cubs for the wild card. Cubs lost 2 out of 3. Mets got swept in Atlanta. 99, Mets entered Atlanta 1 game back for the division. Mets got swept. In the NLCS, the Mets lost all 3 in Atlanta, and prior to the Kenny Rogers walking Game 6, the Mets led 8-7 in the 8th and 9-8 in the 10th. They lost 10-9 and 11. 2001, Mets went on a miracle post-11, 9-11 run, including Piazza's home run. They entered Atlanta with a chance, 3 games out. They lost on Friday. On Saturday, the Mets led 5-1. Entering the 9th, they lost 8-5 after the Braves had a 7-run bottom of the 9th, capped by a walk-off grand slam by Brian Jordan. And then 2022, Mets led by 1 game, heading to Atlanta for the second to last series. 1 win would have given the Mets control of their destiny, as 1 win would have left Atlanta tied with the tiebreaker. They got swept. They finished with 101 and 61 records. So I know all of that stuff happened, but if you think it's going to happen again, then you believe in ghosts.
And let me ask you this, Michael. How many times, if not every single time, those things happen that you just listed, that the Braves were the better team?
Oh, great point. I'm glad you brought that up. Great point.
So much as I hate to admit it, you know what? That happens. When you're not as good as the team you're trying to beat, more times than not, they're going to find a way to beat you. And I know the Mets won 101 games 2 years ago, but the Braves ended up proving out that they were the better team. I got to tell you, they're not the better team now. The first 10 games they played, they were 5-5. And the Mets are a lot better now than they were in those first few meetings with the Atlanta Braves. The Braves have 2 significant players hurt. They've been banged up, and that's why Snitker deserves a lot of credit, if not manager of the year, for even having this team in a position to be able to make the playoffs. But this is the time where you can feel like, you know what, we're every bit as good, if not better, than the Atlanta Braves. So don't tell me about the ghosts of baseball past, when the overwhelming majority, if not all those times, the Braves were just a better team. The Braves were, maybe they didn't win a lot of World Series, Michael, but during that time, they were the gold standard of the National League, winning 14 consecutive divisional titles. You gave the stat yesterday, more divisional titles than any team in the history of baseball. So it's not the Marlins owning you. It's the Atlanta Braves. There's a lot of teams they've left in their wake.
Let's take some phone calls. John in West Orange, why don't you start it off?
Hey, Michael, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Okay. I agree with you with the Verdugo defensive playing, in the postseason. I wish the Yankees had a right-hitting, left fielder to platoon when a lefty pitches. But I really think the way to get Dominguez's bat is to platoon him and Stanton at the DH spot. Against righties, I'll tell you, Stanton is giving us virtually nothing, uncompetitive or incompetitive.
Well, that's not true. I mean, he didn't look good yesterday, and he goes into slumps. He has 25 home runs. I'm sure he's hitting home runs off righties. I'm sorry. And Dominguez is a switch hitter. He's much better from the left side, but he is a switch hitter. They're going to have to make a decision. Do you start Dominguez in left field in the playoffs and then bring in Verdugo for defense late? Or do you start Verdugo and then pinch hit Dominguez late in the game, which is, they actually pinch hit for Volpe yesterday late in the game, in the 9th inning. So how they're going to deploy them, I'm not quite sure. Not quite sure.
And listen, I know the fans love him. He's the Martian. You've been waiting for him. But that's a lot to ask a kid in such an important postseason. That's a lot. Now they should know whether he can handle it or not, and if he's not there, then they're telling you they're not sure he can handle it. So that's a lot to ask a kid to do, Michael.
It's an awful lot, and that's why I think It's one of the most difficult decisions they have. Do you go for the defense? Because Verdugo has not been able to hit. I mean, they could talk all they want about hitting in hard luck. He has not hit. He just has not hit. There was a stretch in August where he actually was hitting around 300. That's when they decided they didn't want to bring up Dominguez right away. Then they brought up Dominguez. He has not hit. Now, can you afford to go into the playoffs with an automatic out in the lineup? And right now, that's what Verdugo is. He got a hit yesterday. It was an infield hit. So it's a really, really interesting call that they're going to make. But I don't know what they're going to do because, you know why, Don? I haven't gotten my marching orders from Cashman yet. Let's go to Anthony in Stony Point.
It's terrible.
Hey, guys, love the show. And, you know, Mike, you hit the nail right on the head. The old thing is, if you're damned if you do and damned if you don't. Defense, offense. But my thing on the Mets, and I think Don would agree with me, this is a fun team to watch. It really is. Even though they lost last night, you know what? It's not like Don said 2 years ago. Even before they went to Atlanta, they could have sewed up that division by beating the Cubs, by beating the Marlins, and they couldn't do it. Beating the Pirates at the end of the season. So you know what? But this team, like you said, they're the best team in baseball. The best record in baseball right now. So we'll see what happens. And if they do get in the playoffs, they could be very dangerous. Who knows? Who knows what could happen?
Anthony, if they get in the playoffs, they have as good a chance to win the World Series as anybody that's going to get into the playoffs. We thank you for the call. Stanton, by the way, has 26 home runs. He can't hit righties, Don. He has 21 home runs against righties.
No, that's a lot.
21 home runs against righties. I mean, people see one game. Yesterday, he looked lost. He had the golden sombrero. I get it. But you can't extrapolate that and say he can't hit righties.
The problem with Stanton when he struggles is
he looks so bad.
When he struggles, he looks like the worst baseball player who ever lived.
Somebody on Twitter yesterday had a great line. I would give credit if I remember who it was. That, you know, when he swings and misses, it's like he misses by 4.5 feet. And the person said it's like somebody playing MLB The Show for the first time. That's what his swing looks like. So Peter's right. Because he looks so bad, you think that's the way it is all the time. But then look at his playoff numbers. You're going to platoon him?
Yeah, there's something about the way he swings and misses when he's off. It looks like he misses the ball by a foot. It is true.